The Shadow Piao sealed the silence before the storm. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the command center of the UNSC Vigilance, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that floated in the center of the room. For 3 weeks, the Krell Empire had gone silent. No raids, no probing attacks, no threatening transmissions. Just silence. And in her 12 years of service, Chun had learned that silence from an enemy was far more dangerous than any battle cry. The Vigilance was a heavy cruiser, one of 47 human vessels scattered across the outer rim territories. They were the frontier guard, the first line of defense against alien incursions into human space. The Krell had been testing them for months, striking supply lines, destroying mining colonies, always retreating before human reinforcements could arrive. They were methodical, calculating, and devastatingly effective. But now, nothing. Chun's second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, approached with a data pad in hand. He was a broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. They had served together since the Battle of Proxima, where they had lost half their crew to a Krell ambush. That experience had forged them into something harder, something more vigilant. Still no contact on any frequencies, Webb reported, his voice low. Long-range sensors show no Krell activity within 5 light years. It's like they've vanished. Chun frowned. The Krell were a proud species, standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous armor that covered their bodies like natural battlesuits. They believed in conquest through superior planning, in victory through intellectual dominance. They had studied humanity for decades before making first contact, and when they finally struck, it was with precision that caught the United Nations Space Command completely off guard. They haven't vanished, Chun said quietly. They're planning something big. The command center hummed with activity around them. Dozens of officers monitored communications, weapons systems, navigation, and sensor arrays. The Vigilance was a fortress in space, bristling with railguns, missile batteries, and energy shields. But Chun knew that firepower alone wouldn't win this war. The Krell were too smart for that. The breakthrough happened during the night shift, when most of the crew was rotating through rest periods. Ensign David Park, a communications specialist barely 23 years old, noticed something unusual in the background radiation his equipment was monitoring. Most officers would have dismissed it as cosmic noise, but Park had a gift for patterns. He saw connections where others saw chaos. He spent 4 hours analyzing the data, running it through every decryption algorithm in the ship's database. When he finally cracked it, his hands were shaking as he reached for the command channel. Captain Chun to the communications bay. Urgent. Priority Alpha. Chun arrived within 3 minutes. Webb right behind her. Park's workstation was surrounded by holographic displays showing waves of encrypted data. The young ensign looked up at her with wide eyes. Captain, I've been monitoring anomalous signals in the subspace band. I thought it was just radiation at first, but there's a pattern. I managed to decrypt part of it using a modified Krell cipher we captured at Proxima. Chun leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Show me. Park activated the translation matrix, and suddenly the gibberish transformed into readable text. Chun's blood ran cold as she read the intercepted message. It was a full battle plan, detailing a massive Krell offensive against the human fleet. Coordinates, timelines, ship deployments, everything. They're planning an ambush, Webb breathed, reading over her shoulder. They're going to hit the supply convoy at the Theta Junction in 48 hours. They think we'll send most of our fleet to protect it. But that wasn't the worst part. The message contained detailed analysis of human tactics, response times, and fleet movements. The Krell had been studying them, predicting their every move with terrifying accuracy. According to their projections, the human fleet would be decimated within hours of the engagement. Chun straightened, her mind racing. The Krell's plan was brilliant. The Theta Junction was a critical resupply point for all human operations in the sector. If they lost it, dozens of colonies would be cut off, vulnerable to attack. Command would have no choice but to commit the entire fleet to its defense. "Captain, we need to alert Command immediately," Webb urged. But Chun held up a hand, a dangerous idea forming in her mind. "Not yet. Park, can you continue monitoring these signals without the Krell detecting us?" The ensign nodded. "Yes, ma'am. They're not even using quantum encryption. They're so confident in their security that they've gotten sloppy." A slow smile spread across Chun's face. "Then we're not going to tell Command. At least, not everything. Webb, gather the senior officers. We're going to do something the Krell won't expect." The Deception the senior staff meeting lasted 6 hours. At first, Chun's officers thought she had lost her mind. Her plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. But as she laid out the details, piece by piece, they began to understand the genius of it. "The Krell think they know how we'll respond," Chun explained, standing before the holographic display that showed the entire sector. "They've predicted our movements, our tactics, our fleet deployment. They believe they have us figured out. That arrogance is their weakness." She manipulated the display, showing the Theta Junction and the surrounding space. "We're going to give them exactly what they expect. We'll transmit orders for the fleet to converge on Theta Junction, just like their projections predict. We'll even use standard encryption that we know they've cracked." Commander Rachel Torres, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. "You want them to intercept our orders?" "Exactly. We'll feed them false information, make them think their plan is working perfectly. Meanwhile, the real fleet will be somewhere else entirely." Webb caught on immediately. "We position our forces in the asteroid field near the junction. The Krell sensors can't penetrate that much debris. When they arrive to spring their ambush, we'll already be waiting." "But Captain," Lieutenant Commander James Harrison, the chief engineer, interjected, "the Krell message said they're bringing over 100 warships. We have less than 50 in the entire sector. Even with the element of surprise, the numbers aren't in our favor." Chun's expression hardened. "Ben will make sure every shot counts. We'll use the asteroids as cover, hit-and-run tactics, focus fire on their command vessels. The Krell fight with rigid hierarchies. Cut off the head, and the body becomes confused. For the next 36 hours, the Vigilance became a hub of furious activity." Chun coordinated with other fleet captains through secure, quantum-encrypted channels that the Krell couldn't intercept. At the same time, they broadcast false orders on compromised frequencies, painting a picture of a human fleet walking blindly into the Krell trap. Park continued monitoring the enemy communications. And sure enough, the Krell were celebrating. Their intercepted messages showed absolute confidence. They believed the humans had no idea what was coming. Their fleet was moving into position exactly as planned. The waiting gained the human fleet, assembled in silence among the asteroids near Theta Junction. 43 vessels, ranging from massive battlecruisers to nimble destroyers, all running on minimal power to avoid detection. The crews waited in tense silence, knowing that everything depended on timing. Chun stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, watching the sensor display. The decoy convoy was already in position at the junction, automated drones configured to mimic human ships. To Krell sensors, it would look like a legitimate supply operation. "Enemy fleet entering sensor range," Torres reported. "Confirmed count, 117 vessels, including 3 command carriers. They're in standard Krell battle formation." Chun nodded slowly. The Krell formation was a hammer, designed to smash through any opposition with overwhelming force. They were positioning themselves to surround the junction, cutting off all escape routes. It was textbook Krell strategy, efficient and brutal. Time to engagement? Chun asked. 12 minutes until they're in weapons range of the decoys. Webb moved beside her. Sarah, once we commit, there's no turning back. If this doesn't work, it will work, Chun interrupted, her voice firm. The Krell have made one critical mistake. They think we're predictable. They think we'll panic, scatter, fight the way we always have. But we've been learning too. We've been adapting. She activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Captain Chun. In a few minutes, the Krell fleet will discover that their perfect ambush has become their perfect trap. They studied us, predicted us, thought they knew everything about how humans fight. But they forgot one thing. Humans don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to win. When I give the signal, we show them what humanity really means. We show them that underestimating us is the last mistake they'll ever make. The Krell fleet moved closer, their ships spreading out in a classic encirclement pattern. Chun watched as they approached the point of no return, the moment when they would be fully committed to their attack. Unable to retreat quickly, on the sensor display, the lead Krell vessels powered up their weapons, preparing to obliterate what they believed was a helpless human convoy. Chun's hand hovered over the command console. "Wait for it," she whispered. The Krell ships opened fire on the decoys. The automated drones exploded in brilliant flashes of light, exactly as planned. "Now!" Chun roared. "All ships weapons free. Hit them with everything we have." Asterisk the price of Arrow-G anti-trap springs. Asteroid field erupted with light and fury as 43 human warships powered up simultaneously. The Krell fleet, spread out in their perfect encirclement formation around empty space, suddenly found themselves surrounded instead of surrounding. Chun's trap had worked flawlessly. The Vigilance was the first to fire, its railguns launching tungsten projectiles at a fraction of light speed directly into the exposed flank of a Krell destroyer. The alien vessel's shields flared and collapsed under the barrage, and secondary explosions rippled across its hull as the rounds tore through armor plating and vital systems. Within seconds, the destroyer was tumbling through space, venting atmosphere and debris dot all across the battlefield. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids like predators from tall grass. The UNSC Defiant, a massive battlecruiser, unleashed a full salvo of cruise missiles that streaked toward a Krell command carrier. The UNSC Relentless and UNSC Indomitable worked in tandem, their coordinated fire cutting through a cluster of Krell frigates that had been positioned to cut off escape routes that didn't exist. Direct hits on multiple targets. Torres shouted over the chaos of the command center. Krell fleet is in complete disarray. They're trying to reform, but their ships are too spread out. Chun watched the tactical display with fierce satisfaction. The Krell had positioned themselves perfectly to destroy a stationary target, but that same formation left them vulnerable, scattered, unable to support each other effectively. And the human fleet was exploiting every gap, every moment of confusion. "Focus fire on the command carriers," Chun ordered. "Take out their leadership and coordination. Webb, prepare a second strike wave. I want those carriers crippled before they can reorganize their fleet." The Krell were not helpless, though. These were experienced warriors, veterans of countless campaigns across dozens of star systems. Even in their confusion, they began to respond. Krell warships turned to face their attackers, their plasma weapons charging with an ominous glow. Return fire lanced across the void, catching a human destroyer that had ventured too far from the asteroid cover. The ship's shields buckled, and its hull was scarred by superheated alien weaponry. But for every human ship that took damage, 3 Krell vessels were disabled or destroyed. The element of surprise was devastating, and Chun pressed the advantage mercilessly. The Krell response on the bridge of the Krell command carrier Dominant Will. High Commander Wexler stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his angular face, blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. His chitinous armor seemed to darken as his body chemistry responded to the stress. Impossible, he hissed in the clicking, guttural language of the Krell. The humans were supposed to be at the junction. Our intelligence was perfect. We intercepted their deployment orders. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Threxon, manipulated the tactical interface with his 4-fingered hands. Commander, the humans fed us false information. They knew we had broken their encryption. This was a counter-ambush. They predicted our predictions. Wexler's mandibles clattered in frustration. The Krell Empire prided itself on intellectual superiority. They were the strategists, the planners, the species that won wars before the first shot was fired. To be outmaneuvered by humans, these primitive apes who had barely left their home system a century ago, was unthinkable. It was humiliating. All ships, pattern Sigma formation, Wexler commanded. Bring the World Breaker forward. We will show these humans the price of their cleverness. The Krell fleet, despite its losses, began to reorganize with impressive speed. Ships moved into defensive clusters, their shields overlapping to create stronger barriers. Damaged vessels retreated behind the protection of healthier ones. And from the rear of the formation, something massive began to move forward. On the Vigilance, alarms began to blare. "Captain, we have a new contact," Torres said, her voice tight with tension. "It's enormous. Energy readings are off the scale. It's 3 times the size of their largest carrier." Chun felt her stomach drop as the sensor data resolved into a visual image. The World Breaker was unlike any Krell vessel they had encountered. It was a dreadnought, a mobile weapons platform bristling with more firepower than half the human fleet combined. Its armor was thick enough to withstand sustained bombardment, and its power core generated enough energy to maintain shields that could absorb tremendous punishment. "That's their secret weapon," Webb breathed. "Intelligence never mentioned anything like this." The World Breaker moved with surprising grace for its size, positioning itself at the center of the reforming Krell fleet. Its weapons arrays began to glow, and Chun realized with horror that it was preparing to fire on multiple targets simultaneously. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she shouted into the fleet channel. "Get behind the asteroids now." The dreadnought fired, and space itself seemed to tear apart. Massive beams of concentrated plasma energy swept across the battlefield, vaporizing asteroids and clipping 2 human frigates that couldn't maneuver fast enough. One frigate exploded instantly. The other tumbled away, its entire port side melted into slag, life support failing, crew desperately evacuating in escape pods. Chun gripped the arms of her command chair. This was the moment the Krell had been counting on, their trump card, the weapon that would turn the tide. The human fleet's momentum had stalled, ships scrambling for cover. Officers on every bridge recalculating their odds of survival. Human ingenuity, but Chun had not survived 12 years of combat by giving up when the enemy showed strength. She had survived by thinking differently, by finding solutions where conventional tactics failed. Her mind raced through options, discarding strategies as quickly as she conceived them. Direct assault was suicide. The World Breaker's shields and armor were too strong. Retreat meant abandoning the sector and condemning colonies to destruction. Then she saw it. A possibility so risky, so unconventional, that no Krell strategist would ever predict it. "Torres, what's the status of our mining charges?" Chun asked suddenly. The tactical officer looked confused. "The asteroid mining explosives? We have full stocks. We were supposed to use them for resource extraction operations, but can we reprogram them for remote detonation?" Torres's eyes widened as she understood. "Yes, ma'am. But they're designed for breaking apart asteroids, not ship-to-ship combat. The blast radius is enormous, but mostly debris and shockwaves. Exactly, Chun said, a dangerous smile crossing her face. She activated the fleet channel. All ships, this is Chun. Listen carefully. We're going to do something the Krell won't see coming, because it's completely insane. She quickly outlined her plan. There was a moment of shocked silence on the channel. Then Webb began to laugh. It was a sound without humor, the laugh of someone who had accepted that survival required madness. "Captain, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard," came the voice of Captain Rodriguez from the UNSC Defiant. "I love it." "We're in." Other captains chimed in with agreement. They were all veterans, all survivors, all people who understood that conventional warfare against a superior force meant death. But unconventional warfare, the kind of improvised chaos that humans specialized in, that gave them a chance. The human fleet began to move with renewed purpose. Destroyers and frigates darted between asteroids, deploying mining charges on the largest rocks they could find. Engineers worked frantically to reprogram the explosives, linking them to remote triggers. Meanwhile, the heavier cruisers and battleships engaged the Krell fleet in hit-and-run attacks. Keeping them focused on the immediate threat, the Worldbreaker fired again, its devastating beams carving through space. But the human ships were moving erratically now, unpredictably, refusing to present easy targets. The Krell dreadnought was powerful, but it was also slow to maneuver, designed for overwhelming firepower rather than agility. Asterisk. Chun watched the tactical display, counting down in her head. The mining charges were in position, scattered across dozens of large asteroids in a rough sphere around the Krell formation. The trigger systems were active, awaiting her command. "All ships, pull back to safe distance," she ordered. "Prepare for debris field." The human fleet retreated, opening up distance between themselves and the Krell. Vexler, watching from the dominant will, saw this as confirmation of human defeat. They were running, as he had always known they would. Humans were impulsive, emotional creatures. When faced with superior force, they broke. "All ships, pursue," he commanded. "Do not let them escape. The Worldbreaker will lead the assault." The Krell fleet moved forward, the massive dreadnought at its center, pushing deeper into the asteroid field in pursuit of their fleeing prey. Chun waited until the Krell were fully committed. Their ships spread throughout the field. The Worldbreaker positioned exactly where she needed it. "Detonate," she said quietly. The impossible Victor I-73 mining charges exploded simultaneously across the asteroid field. Each charge was designed to fragment rock for easier collection, to break apart celestial bodies that had existed for billions of years. The explosions themselves were not particularly powerful by military standards, but their effect was catastrophic. Massive asteroids shattered into millions of pieces, each fragment becoming a projectile moving at tremendous velocity. The debris field expanded outward like a shotgun blast, a cloud of death composed of rocks ranging from pebble-sized to house-sized. The shrapnel moved in all directions, but the human fleet had positioned themselves outside the primary blast radius. The Krell fleet was at the center of it. Krell shields flared and failed under the sustained impact of countless projectiles. Smaller vessels were torn apart by boulder-sized fragments moving at kilometers per second. Larger ships endured, but their shields were depleted, their armor cracked and breached. Communication arrays were sheared off. Weapon systems were damaged. The carefully organized formation dissolved into chaos about the Worldbreaker. The pride of the Krell fleet, the unstoppable dreadnought, took the worst in it. Its shields absorbed tremendous punishment, but even they had limits. A fragment the size of a building struck its forward section, punching through weakened shielding and tearing a massive gash in the armored hull. Secondary explosions rippled across the dreadnought, As systems failed and fuel lines ruptured, the human fleet didn't hesitate. While the Krell were still reeling from the debris storm, human ships charged back into the field, weapons blazing. They targeted the disabled and damaged vessels, finishing off ships that could no longer defend themselves. It was brutal, efficient, and absolutely necessary. Chun focused the Vigilance's fire on the World Breaker. The dreadnought was wounded, but not dead, and as long as it remained operational, it was a threat. Railgun rounds slammed into the breach in its armor, driving deeper into its internal structure. Other human ships joined the attack, concentrating their firepower on the one target that could still turn the battle. On the dominant will, Vexler watched his fleet die around him. More than half his ships were destroyed or disabled. The World Breaker was listing, its power core fluctuating, its crew abandoning ship in escape craft. The humans were everywhere, moving with a ferocity and determination that defied his every calculation. "Commander, we must retreat," Threxen urged. "If we stay, we will be destroyed." Vexler stared at the tactical display, his body rigid with shock and disbelief. The Krell Empire had planned this operation for months. Every variable had been calculated, every human response anticipated. They had brought overwhelming force, superior technology, and the element of surprise. They should have won, but the humans had done something no Krell strategist had predicted. They had turned the environment itself into a weapon. They had used tools meant for peaceful mining as instruments of war. They had improvised, adapted, and overcome against impossible odds. It was. Vexler realized with a chill that penetrated even his armored hide. The most human thing they could have done. "Sound the retreat," he said, his voice hollow. "All surviving ships. Emergency jump to Rally Point Sigma. We're leaving." The remaining Krell vessels, battered and broken, activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished from the battlefield in flashes of displaced energy. They left behind wreckage, debris, and the bodies of thousands of their fallen warriors. The human fleet held its position, weapons still tracking, waiting to ensure the Krell didn't return. Aftermath on the bridge of the Vigilance. The crew erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other, shouting in triumph and relief. They had faced annihilation and survived. They had been outnumbered and outgunned, and they had won. Chun allowed herself a small smile, then raised her hand for silence. The cheering gradually died down, and her crew looked to her expectantly. "Send a message to all surviving Krell vessels on open frequencies," she said. "Tell them that today they learned an important lesson. Tell them that humans don't fight by the book. We write our own rules. We improvise, we adapt, and we never, ever give up. Tell them that if they come back, we'll be ready. And tell them that underestimating humanity is a mistake they should never make again." Webb relayed the message, broadcasting it across every channel. Somewhere in the darkness of space, fleeing Krell commanders would receive it, and they would understand. Chun turned to her crew, her expression becoming serious. "Get me casualty reports from all ships. I want rescue operations started immediately for any survivors, human or Krell. And someone get me a channel to command. They need to know what happened here." As her officers moved to execute her orders, Chun looked out at the debris field that had been a battlefield minutes before. They had won, but the cost had been high. 3 human ships destroyed, 7 more badly damaged, hundreds of crew members dead or injured. But they had stopped a Krell invasion fleet, had protected the colonies, had proven that humanity could stand against any threat. The war was far from over. The Krell Empire would not forget this defeat, and they would return. But next time, they would come with a healthy respect for human ingenuity. They would come knowing that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers or strength. It was the refusal to accept defeat, the ability to find solutions in impossible situations. and the sheer stubborn determination to survive and protect what was theirs. Chun sat back in her command chair, exhausted but satisfied. The Krell had planned the perfect ambush, had predicted every human move, had brought overwhelming force. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. Humans don't follow predictions. Humans make the impossible happen. And that, Chun thought as she watched her fleet begin rescue operations, was why humanity would ultimately prevail. Asterisk,